When Dad brought that Mustang home, I was 5. And honestly, it was a mess. Rust everywhere, torn seats, it didn't run. Even the paint looked tired. I loved it. The garage was the first place I remember feeling completely like myself. I could be dirty, loud, curious, and right in the middle of things. Then I got older, and people started telling me what girls were supposed to like. Pretty girls especially. Apparently, mechanic shops were not a neighborhood repair shop and had one very clear thought. What am I waiting for? The Mustang was a 1967. At 5 years old, I mostly saw a giant rusty puzzle sitting in our garage. Dad's name is Mike. He would stand over that engine with his sleeves rolled up, staring at it like the car had insulted him personally. Something wouldn't move. He'd pull harder. It still wouldn't move. Then he'd take one frustrated swipe at the car, remember I was standing there, and turn a curse word into some strange noise I had never heard before. I thought this was hilarious. He did not. Well, not right away. Then he'd hand me a rag or a wrench and say, "Come on, kiddo, let's try it again." That was our rhythm. The garage got hot in the summer. My hair stuck to my face, my hands were always greasy, and I usually had no idea what I was doing. But Dad never made me feel like I was in the way. First, I held the flashlight, badly. Then I learned the tools, then the parts. Eventually, I started figuring things out before he finished explaining them. And every time something finally worked, Dad made me feel like we had just won the Indy 500. That car wasn't his project with his daughter occasionally wandering into the garage. It was ours. Year after year, the Mustang changed. Not quickly, very slowly actually. A straightened panel here, a cleaned part there. One box would disappear, and 3 more would somehow take its place. But under all that rust, a classic started to show up. Then, middle school happened. And suddenly, the grease under my nails wasn't proof that I'd had a great weekend. It was something people noticed. Girls asked why my hands looked like that. Kids joked that I smelled like a garage. And I heard the same message in 100 different ways. Girls are supposed to stay clean. Pretty girls don't work on cars. Girls definitely don't grow up dreaming about owning a mechanic shop. Now, did any of that make sense? No. But when you're 12 or 13, enough people can repeat nonsense until it starts sounding like a rule. So I scrubbed my nails harder before school. I stopped talking about the Mustang. If somebody asked what I did over the weekend, I left out the part I actually loved. That's the funny thing about social pressure. Nobody has to stop you. They just make you wonder whether being yourself is worth the attention. I didn't stop loving cars. I just stopped wanting people to know I loved them. By high school, Dad would lean into the house and ask the same question. "Honey, car time?" And I always had an excuse. Homework, a friend was calling, I was tired, maybe tomorrow. You know, teenager stuff. Dad never made it dramatic. He kept working on the car and he kept asking. The garage door stayed open, even when I stopped walking through it. At the time, I told myself I was growing up. Really, I was editing myself into a version that other people might understand. High school became college. College became a career in finance. And to be clear, finance was not some terrible mistake. I was good at it. I learned how to read the numbers, measure risk, and tell the difference between a fun idea and an idea that could pay its bills. I built a good life. I got married. We had 2 kids, now 10 and 12. My husband is supportive, funny, and completely unable to turn a wrench. I say that with love. His garage skills are ordering pizza and staying out of the way when someone says, "Don't touch that." Every team needs that person. Meanwhile, the Mustang was still sitting in Dad's garage. It looked better than it had when I was 5, but it still wasn't finished. Dad was 62 now. I was 41. And on my way to work every morning, I passed this little neighborhood repair shop. It wasn't fancy or huge, just a good busy shop in a good neighborhood. And every time I passed it, my brain wandered off without me. What if I owned that place? What if I knew the customers by name? What if Dad and I finally brought the Mustang into one of those bays and finished what we started? Then the light would change, somebody would honk, and I would keep driving to the office. For a long time, I treated the dream like something I had missed. Maybe if I had made different choices at 18. Maybe if I had ignored everybody back in middle school. But that wasn't really true. At 41, I had things I didn't have at 18. I understood money and risk. I knew how to build a plan. I had a supportive family. And disappointing strangers seemed a lot less frightening than disappointing myself. I didn't need to go backward and become the girl I used to be. I needed to bring her forward with me. Then came one hot morning in July. I was driving the same route I had followed hundreds of times. I got close to the shop, and I couldn't keep going. Nothing terrible had happened. I hadn't been fired. I wasn't running away from a disaster. I was simply tired of passing my own life every morning. And I knew something else. Nobody was going to show up with a permission slip. There wasn't going to be a perfect Monday when the questions disappeared and a sign started flashing. "Amanda, now is the time." So I put on my turn signal. I pulled into the lot, and I sat there for a second with both hands on the steering wheel, thinking, well, now you actually have to go inside. I walked in and asked the attendant if the owner was there. He went toward the back office, and yes, I expected an older man to come around the corner, which is a little embarrassing. I had spent years being annoyed by other people's assumptions, and there I was, making one of my own. Then, an older woman stepped out and smiled. "Hi, I'm Pam. I'm the owner. How can I help you?" That one sentence changed the entire temperature of the room. I told her the truth. I had passed her shop for years. I worked in finance. I grew up working on a Mustang with my dad. And then I asked the question I had rehearsed in the parking lot. "Would you ever consider selling?" Pam didn't laugh. She didn't ask if my husband was the mechanic. She didn't look at me like I had wandered into the wrong building. She said, "Let's talk." So we did, for what felt like hours. Pam told me about the shop, the customers, and the years she had put into the place. She understood what it meant to me. She was delighted by the idea that another woman might take what she had built and carry it forward. That was my first real win. I walked in ready to explain why a woman belonged there. Pam treated it like the most normal thing in the world. Now, Pam did not hand me the keys that afternoon. This is the part inspirational stories sometimes skip. The jump matters. So does checking where you're going to land. I needed to understand the value and cash flow, contracts and obligations, permits, insurance, environmental responsibilities, staffing, and safe operations. Because requirements vary by location, I brought in qualified help. This was the moment my finance career stopped looking like the road that took me away from cars. It became the road that brought me back. The spreadsheets didn't kill the dream. They helped me see how to make it real. I also had to get honest about what owning the shop would mean. I wasn't going to pretend I could fix every vehicle better than people who had spent their careers doing it. That isn't leadership. That's ego with a socket set. I would be an involved owner-operator, keep learning, and build around qualified people who knew their work. My job wasn't to prove I could do everything alone. My job was to build a shop customers could trust. When I told Dad what I was doing, he got very quiet. Then he glanced toward the Mustang. "Honey, car time?" This time, I said yes. The purchase took time. There were inspections, questions, paperwork, and more paperwork. Every finished step felt like getting one more stubborn bolt to move. Then the day came when Pam placed the keys in my hand. I thought the moment might feel strange or unreal. It didn't. It felt familiar. It felt like Dad handing me a wrench. Pam was happy. I was trying not to cry. And somewhere inside me, the middle school girl who had worried about the grease under her nails finally got quiet. I didn't buy the shop to prove that women could own mechanic shops. Pam had already proved that. I bought it because this woman wanted to. The Mustang finally left Dad's garage and came into mine. Just saying that still makes me smile. Dad and I worked beside each other again, a little older, a little slower, and better at laughing when something went wrong. My kids joined us. My husband continued to lead the pizza department with distinction. We respected the craft, kept learning, and brought in expertise when we needed it. And the progress came in little wins. A cleaned part went back where it belonged. A stubborn fastener finally moved. The body got straighter. The interior came back to life. The pile of mystery boxes started getting smaller. One afternoon, I noticed grease under one of my children's nails. For half a second, I remembered trying to scrub mine clean before school. Then I smiled. In our garage, grease wasn't for boys or girls. It meant you helped. Working on that car gave Dad and me our old language back. It gave my kids a chance to know him through patience, bad jokes, and those strange, almost curse noises when a bolt refused to move. And it gave me something I didn't know I needed. I stopped dividing myself into acceptable pieces. I could be feminine and mechanically capable. I could understand cash flow and carburetors. I could lead a shop and still ask for help. None of those things canceled out the others. They were all me. Then the day came. The Mustang sat inside the shop, finished. The rust was gone. The body was straight. Light actually bounced off the paint instead of disappearing into it. Dad stood next to me. My kids were watching. My husband had wisely moved away from anything mechanically important. I turned the key. The engine cranked. It coughed. And because it was our Mustang, it made us wait one more second. Then it caught. That sound filled the entire shop. Dad looked at me, and for just a moment, I was 5 years old again. Except this time, the garage was mine. At 41, I didn't become a different person. I stopped walking away from the person I had always been. I didn't have to become less feminine to belong in a garage, and I didn't have to throw away my finance career. It wasn't unrelated. I brought the numbers, the judgment, the patience, and the planning with me. That's the thing nobody tells you about starting something after 40. You are not starting empty-handed. You have years of skills, mistakes, and better questions. You may already have half the tools. You just haven't put them in the same toolbox yet. And the jump doesn't have to be reckless. It can have research, it can have numbers, it can have qualified help and a responsible plan. My jump didn't begin when I bought the shop. It began when I stopped driving past it. Maybe yours is a phone call, a class, an application, one honest conversation with somebody who has already done the thing you're considering. You don't have to become somebody else before you begin. You may just need to stop asking everybody else for permission to be yourself. Sometimes you just have to jump. And if you want more stories about what can open up after 40, subscribe to Jason the Entertainer. There are a lot more open garage doors out there.